prayer. That way, I can get my mind right and maybe have a little extra guidance so I don't screw it up. So, if you will, bow with me. Dear Lord, I come before you tonight asking that you guide my words, guide my thoughts, and that everything that is said and done tonight will be in accordance to your will and understood clearly. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. So there was a study done that if you get a group of fleas and put them in a mason jar that's about 8 inches tall, over a few days they will only jump just shy of that 8 inches. If they have a bunch of babies, those babies will never jump above just shy of that 8 inches. They'll never reach their full potential in jumping because fleas can have a 36-inch jump. So they'll go from 36 inches down to less than 8. And if you let that go long enough, you dump them out, they'll never jump above that 8-inch mark. They have learned, they've hit their head. They've passed that on down to generations and generations, and they'll never jump 36 inches like they can. Now, here's a question for you. What does a jar full of fleas, Peter, Judas, Adam and Eve, and Samson all have in common? That's a tricky one, right? Well, one, they might have had fleas at one point. But two, I'm going to explain this one to you. It's going to really kick in. Peter, in Luke chapter 22, verses 54 through 62, is where he denied Jesus. Judas, we all know the story of that. He betrayed Christ. Adam and Eve, in the Garden of Eden, decided to partake of the fruit off the tree of knowledge, brought sin into the world. Samson, what did he do? He decided to get an honest man's haircut here, as he was told not to. And the fleas never jumped past 8 inches. They were all affected by their surroundings. They all let their environment affect and dictate how they ended up living part of their life or the end of their life. Peter was scared of what would happen to him if they found out he was one of Jesus' favorite people. Judas decided he was going to let his greed and his fear overtake his life, and he betrayed Jesus. Adam and Eve, they wanted that promise of knowledge over God's promise. They let their environment of being around that serpent dictate what they were going to do. That serpent didn't have a gun. He didn't force them. They chose, just like Judas, just like Peter, and just like Samson when he trusted Delilah, over trusting what God said. They all was affected and let their environments dictate what they were going to do in their lives. And that was the negative side. Now we'll go to a personal story, because when the very first sermon I ever preached, I was 15 years old, and right before I was getting it all together, an older preacher, he said, if you want to make an impact and you want to make it worth listening to, you bring a life story into it. Something that has affected you in the past or sometimes still affects you in the present. So, here's my life story for this lesson. Young Staff Sergeant Leke, Kunsan Air Base, back in 2012. I'm shift lead, I'm in charge. And we're out there working on a jet. It's about 5 of us. And one of the young kids decided to do what we've all heard and seen, tell a very dirty, inappropriate joke at work. Staff Sergeant Leke started laughing. He thought it was hilarious. And then from behind, a young airman said, hey, I don't want to hear that mess. Y'all want to do that, y'all go somewhere else. I'm not putting up with that at work. Staff Sergeant Leke, right here, was affected. He knew that wasn't supposed to be said. He knew that wasn't supposed to be right, and he was in the position to correct it. He let his environment dictate how he was going to act. The young airman behind him, he wasn't putting up with it. He wasn't letting the environment of the flight line change who he was. And we've all been there. Anybody who's ever been out in the world has been around worldly people and been around those dirty jokes, those bad comments. But how did we act? Maybe at one point in our life we laughed at that joke. Maybe we shut it down. But how did we act? That's something we ask ourselves. Every day we run into positive and negative influences. If we choose to be involved with the negative influences, the negativity rubs off on us. Whoever we choose to hang out with is going to affect who we're going to be. That same mindset goes to the positive people. If we walk away from the negative people and we hang around the positive people, that positivity is going to rub off on us. One bad apple can surely spoil the whole bunch, right? In Luke chapter 10, verse 25 through 37, it is the story of the Good Samaritan. And we all know the story of the Good Samaritan, right? Man gets robbed, beaten, left for dead on the side of the road. The Good Samaritan comes up and saves him, takes him up to the next village and helps him out. But what happened before that? What happened before that? There's a priest. What did he do? He walked around to the other side of the road because he didn't want to be seen helping that man. What did the Levite do? Walked on the other side of the road because he didn't want to be seen helping that man. Right? Everybody focused on the Good Samaritan. Everybody focused on the person that was hurt. What about the people that knew better, knew they should help him, supposed to be godly people, went away and walked off because they were worried what people might think about them, what might happen to them. They were allowing their environment, their status, and society dictate what they were going to do. So, doesn't matter where you're at, doesn't matter who you're around, doesn't matter what status you got. Sometimes we all fall short, just like a priest and a Levite. Sometimes we end up trying to walk on the other side of the road. It's our job to get ourselves back on the correct side and help who needs help. Do the right thing. The Samaritan, he saw what needed to be done. He had the integrity to do what was right. He didn't care about anything else other than what was right. Who else did that? Job. Anybody think of anybody that had more negativity around him than Job? Wife, kids, friends, family, the entire world. He didn't waver 1 second. Never even had a thought of wavering. Got Noah. He was building that. What do you have? His kids, but kids do what they're told most of the time. His wife, the whole rest of the world. Trying to tell him how dumb it was to build this ark. It ain't never rained before. We ain't going to worry about that. You're crazy. Noah didn't waver. He built that ark. And look where that led him. But if we're going to bring an example of who did the right thing no matter what, Jesus. Every single thing that could ever tempt, that could ever persuade anybody to be negative, Jesus went through it. And he never lost it. There was positive and negative influence that stood around him. Never saw negative come out of Jesus. Who did Jesus hang out with? He hung out with everybody. Every type of person from every walk of life You never saw him turn negative. But also, who did he hang out with constantly and consistently? The apostles, his mother, his brother, his family. He kept that close-knit circle of positive, like-minded thoughts from people that were like him, so that he could also keep them positive as well. Nothing ever let him be negative, but he made sure his close circle was positive type people. We can't always choose who we hang out with. We can't always choose who we have to work around, but we can choose who our friends are. And although we can't choose who we're hanging out with, we can choose who's going to influence us. Got people at work. Everybody that has a job has people at work that are of the world. How much influence do they have on you? How much influence do you have on them? We pick our circle, our close circle. Can't pick who we run into every day. Can't pick who we associate with at work, because those are just co-workers. But we can choose how we act and how we interact and react with those people. Just like Jesus, we need to surround ourselves with positive, like-minded people so that the negative doesn't creep in. Proverbs chapter 13, verses 20 and 21 states, "He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed." Verse 21, "Evil pursueth sinners, but to the righteous good shall be repaid." Now, one thing I've learned is if Proverbs says it, probably is going to hit home sometime in your life. They got a lot of good stuff in there. But it says right there, if you want to be around positive, wise people, or if you want to be one of the positive, wise people, you need to be hanging out with positive, wise people. If you hang out with a bunch of heathens, you're eventually going to act like a heathen. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17. This is one of my favorites. "Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth his countenance of his friends." So, this is why I got the table up here. Most people should know what this is. That right there is a sharpening stone for sharpening a knife. Now, this right here can have multiple different purposes and reasons, but the one I'm going to focus on is when you go to sharpen this knife on this stone, every swipe you make, you can hear it grinding off little fine pieces of this steel. You would think that just a little smooth stone wouldn't do much, but it's shaving little fine grains of steel off of this blade. Now, doesn't matter where you angle it, where you hold it, it's going to shave off little things. If I do it like this, it's going to flatten that blade. If I put it at the right angle and I run it over and over, I'm going to be able to finish my haircut with this blade, right? So by sharpening that knife on that sharpening stone, we could look at it like this. As the knife rubs and shaves little small pieces off of that steel, the people we hang out with are rubbing and shaving things off of us. We need to choose whether or not what they're rubbing off is positive or negative. What our environment is running through us is just like that sharpening stone. Now, it can be a positive thing, it can be a negative thing. And we need to figure out whether we're going to, as individuals, be sharpened or dulled by our environment. When our environment sharpens us and we lose certain parts, we got to figure out if we're going to be kicking off the negative, or if we're going to be losing and kicking off the positive and being more worldly instead of more godly. That stone is stationary. Our environment, while it might change from day to day, it's always been the same and always will be the same. It's good and bad. And we got to find out where our good and where our bad is. But just like that sharpening stone sharpening that knife blade, we affect our environment also. Because as you're sharpening, pieces of that stone are wearing down. Our environment sharpens us or dulls us, just like we wear our environment down. But what we shave off of our environment, is that positive that we're kicking off? Or are we shaving off the negative so that we can have a more positive environment? Maybe we can work a little bit harder on our own individual side, shave off some of the negative in our workplace, in our friends, some of our associates. If we're shaving off some of the negative of them, in turn, we're sharpening ourselves. We always got to make sure that we're making a positive impact. We got to make sure we're sharpening ourselves and not dulling ourselves. And if you're trying to make it to heaven, like we all are, because if you weren't trying to make it to heaven, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be watching on the live stream. Then this right here would be simple to understand, that if you're trying to go to heaven, you got to be sharp when you walk in. What'd the song say? A sharp-dressed man. That's something to sing about. You never heard a song saying that dull, raggedy guy over there. All right? Being sharp means something. You don't want to try to fillet a fish or skin a deer with a piece of rebar. Right? You want something nice and sharp. To get into heaven, we need to be sharp. We don't need to be dull. We can't be dull. You can't open a package with the back end of the knife unless you press real hard. We ain't pressing our way into heaven. We need something sharp. We need to be sharp. And in order for us to be sharp, we also need to sharpen our environment and carry that message out there. I know a lot of people, everybody, deals with bad environments in their life. We can't get past that. That's part of life. Changing that environment can be extremely difficult. It can be very, very hard to change it because we get set in our routines and that's just how it is. No, sometimes it ain't got to be how it is. Sometimes we can change it no matter what. And if anyone here needs help changing that environment or needs anything whatsoever, there's nothing stronger than the power of prayer. And if anyone needs any help, needs any prayers, or anything whatsoever to help get their self sharpened, please come now as we stand and sing.
Who at the door is standing? Entrance within demanding. Whose is the voice I hear? Sweetly the tones are falling. Open the door for me. If thou wilt heed my calling, I will abide with thee. Be seated, please.
If you're here tonight and did not have an opportunity to participate in the Lord's Supper, it is prepared in the back, so please, at this time, feel free to go so and participate in that. Thank you, Matt. Enjoyed that very much. Think of an adage I heard a long time ago, similar to that. It says, we cannot control the winds that blow, but we can control our environment, we can't control what we're exposed to, except for the company we keep. But we can adjust ourselves in line with what God would have us to do. Again, thank y'all for being here tonight. I encourage you to get a bulletin. I'm not gonna go over everything we went over this morning. I want to thank the ladies that came tonight. We had 23 here. That was wonderful. I was only expecting about 15. But it was great. Thank you for the questions, concerns, and comments that you submitted in writing and during the meeting. And as the auditor, we promise we will do a better job on informing you all of things that are going on behind the scenes. So again, thank you very much. So again, get the bulletin, keep it handy. Remember, next week is the photos renewal for the directory. Come prepared. Kevin does a great job on doing that, and I thank her very much for doing that. The office will be closed tomorrow, and again, I caution you for Tuesday and Wednesday, unless you have to get out, though. Roads are going to be bad. They've already canceled the schools, Coast County from Monday and Tuesday, I was told. Tuesday, Wednesday. Monday's been closed anyway. There you go. They're expecting, I think I saw 3 to 5 inches of snow in Coast County. I've lived in snowy areas before, and I learned to drive on old red clay so I can handle snow. But anyway, be very careful out there. Protect yourself, protect your house, protect your animals. We're talking about weather damage to possibly the teens for an attitude. So it can be very, very uncomfortable and even life-threatening. So take care of yourselves. We love you, and we want you to take care of yourself. Let's be dismissed now.
Right. I visited Dorothy Atwell this afternoon. She was supposed to be discharged to go home.
Excellent. Because we announced she wasn't in 320 at the hospital, so that's great.
Well, I think her granddaughter was pretty sure she was going to be discharged.
Excellent. Very good. Speediness to the work purpose. Precious, loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for that good news about this Ratwell, and thank you for the other good news of people recovering, responding to treatment. And just overall, Lord, we are so lucky and blessed to be part of this congregation here, but even more lucky and blessed to be a child of yours, and we thank you for that. But we know that without you, your love, your grace, and your mercy, and that of your Son Jesus, we wouldn't stand a chance. But as Matt said, we all want to go to heaven. We need to do what we can to get there, and part of that is being here. The other part is to comply with your word and your will as best we can, and to put your Son Jesus on through baptism so that we can experience eternity with you in heaven. Be with us now as we're